All right, welcome back to Fish Out Northwest. We are actually ready to go this time in the bait lab, not running around with our heads cut off trying to make this thing happen. So, gotta love live TV. Anyway, we've recovered and we are going to talk about curing pink eggs or humpy eggs. Every time I say that though, Dave giggles, so we'll just say pink eggs. A couple things about pink eggs, okay? First of all, they're a much softer egg, and I'll show you here in comparison as we pull it in closer later, but you know, they have much less skin around the overall eggs than, say, these coho eggs that are laying next to them. So they're a softer egg. If you use a strong sulfite-based cure, oftentimes you're going to find that they tend to ooze a lot of fluid, they burst. Some refer to that in industry as you've burned your eggs. A hot sulfite-based cure on humpy eggs, pink eggs, does not work really well. So I've softened the blow a little bit over the years, and I have kind of mixed and matched and come up with something that I use on a lot of my fall salmon eggs. And the reason I say that is I'll not only use this mixture that I'm going to show you on pink eggs, but for in-river adult salmon, coho, Chinook, even chum. If you retain those fish and they have mature eggs in them, you're going to find that the skin is starting to break down around the skein, softening the egg and opening them up quite a bit wider. There's, in some cases, not a lot of skin holding that skein intact. So anytime you use a strong sulfite-based cure on those types of soft eggs with lack of skin, it doesn't really do a lot to firm or toughen up the skin on that skein, making it a fishable, durable bait. You'll find that you go through a lot of bait because it starts off soft and you cure it and actually just perpetuate the softness, and they don't hold on. I hear that often is like, I cure these up and they only last a cast or two. So when it comes to soft eggs in mature fish in river and or your pink eggs, here's a surefire way to make sure you can cure them up, and they're going to work very, very well. So fire cure is a Pautzke cure, obviously. Fire cure is a strong sulfite-based cure. It works great on salmon eggs. If you get a lot of salmon out in the salt, early in the lower estuary systems or lower in the river and the skeins are tight, I recommend using fire cure, especially the dark red. It puts a phenomenal cure on the eggs. They milk out tremendously. They have a ton of scent. They hold up well and they fish very, very good. Fish respond to them. Again, heavy sulfite cure, heavy to moderate. When I get softer eggs and don't want to use a ton of sulfites, again, I soften the blow. I go with BorX fire, which is basically engineered to cure eggs to fish for steelhead. Steelhead particularly don't really respond well to sulfites. They like more of a sweet bait, something with a little bit more sugar in it, not so strong in the sulfites. So you stick with a cure that is sulfite free, but I like to have sulfite in there as a bite stimulant. I think it really makes a difference in river when you're pursuing Chinook and coho especially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this full bottle of BorX fire, okay? I'm going to dump it into a container. Now into this, I got a couple things I'm going to want to mix to make it more of a salmon cure versus what it is right now, as I mentioned, a steelhead cure. I have 1 tablespoon for this entire 32-ounce bottle. I have 1 tablespoon of sodium sulfite. And you can get sodium sulfite at pretty much any store that sells baits and/or cures. You'll find it under different brands and different labels. So I do add some sodium sulfite, but not enough that I feel like it's going to burn the eggs. And over the years of using it in this proportion ratio, I find that it works very well. I add 1/2 cup of fine granulated sugar because I do like to have a little bit of a sweeter bait, believe it or not, when it comes to Chinook and coho fishing eggs under a bobber. I find that the sugar actually helps the eggs milk out more and send a bigger scent trail downriver to the fish. I'm also going to add in a 1 to 2 tablespoons of the Pautzke Firepower krill powder, 100% krill that's been dehydrated and made into a powder. I like more krill as a bite stimulant in my fall fisheries, and so I add that in here as well, even though the BorX fire already has a good amount of krill within it. So now I take this tub of cure mixture. I'm just going to mix it around really well. This is the dry portion of the cure that is going to go onto my eggs. Now, early on, I used to measure and use a certain amount or ratio or proportion of cure that would go on to the amount of eggs I have sitting here before me. But I've realized over years that simply by eyeballing it and sprinkling it on, it works just fine. Now, don't throw the container away after you mix this up. You simply need to grab a funnel and dump this back in here, because you do need to store it in a container. Now, you've added more stuff to it, so it's probably not all going to fit in the container, which is no big deal, because after you use some out of your bottle, you can put the rest back into your jar. Okay, so now we got the basic mixture and the ingredients that I like to have in there. The other thing you can add, I have various types of powders that I've acquired from different companies and whatnot. This is actually ground up tuna. If you don't want to use tuna out of a can, dehydrated tuna flesh, and you can get online and shop around, you can find dehydrated tuna, you can find dehydrated sardine, which has worked well for me for years. You can add that into your mixture bottle if you choose, and sprinkle that right onto your eggs as well. And as it juices up and rehydrates the natural flesh of this dehydrated fish, the oils and whatnot actually come out of this, and it's a really good bite stimulant to add. So oftentimes, I didn't do it tonight because basically I forgot, but oftentimes I will add dehydrated powders of ground up fish, different types of fish, into my cures. So now it's pretty simple. This is going to be a gallon Ziploc bag type of a cure process. A couple things we want to do first though. As I'm looking at my eggs, I have a number of pink egg skeins here that are wide open. As I mentioned before, they lay open, they're nice and wide. I don't need to butterfly these. I've already removed the blood out of most of them. Real quickly, I'm going to show you how to remove the blood out of this one skein here that still has blood in it. You can see that vein right along there. And you can move that blood. These eggs have been in the fridge for a day and a half, and the blood still moves along that vein. I take a flat edge of my knife or my scissors, and I can literally move that blood down that vein. So all I need to do is put a small cut at the far end of that vein and open it up. And as I get that blood to travel, I basically wick it away with this paper towel right at the end here. See, all that blood comes out of there. I don't want to cure blood in my skein. You can even push it from the side back into the vein there. I don't want to cure blood into my skein. The eggs will cure. The blood tends to spoil and add a weird smell to your eggs. So we want to get as much blood out of our skein as we can. Now this is a humpy skein. For the most part, it's wide open. You may need to cut the end right there just to lay that open. That's referred to as butterflied. This little tiny coho skein, sorry we didn't get a bigger one, but that's the one. You can see how much skin is around that coho skein compared to, say, this pink salmon is wide open. Tighter skeins like this, it's really simple to butterfly. You're just going to take a real sharp knife right down the middle of that skein. If this was a larger skein, you'd do the same exact thing. We're just going to run that down the middle, and look at that, just lays it wide open, okay? So now that is what we refer to as butterfly. If you butterfly steaks or cuts of meat, it's the same thing. We're just laying that open so that we can get the cure inside the skein. It does a much nicer job, more evenly distributed around the egg. So now I have my eggs laid out here, pretty much single layer, nice and wide open, and I'm going to basically take the powder cure and sprinkle it on. Now I used to say, or I said earlier, that I used to measure, and for me now it's more of a visual in that I just add the cure. Again, this isn't a real strong sulfite cure, so I don't have to worry about burning the eggs, but I want to make sure I get enough of this on there that's going to cure and do a nice job. Now this does a pretty good job like this, but to really get these cured and to get the eggs cured evenly and all around and to firm them up even a little bit more, I rely on our Pautzke's fire brine. So I basically take this powder cure and put it on here after I've mixed it to the ratios that I need. And then I'm going to put it into the bag, and I'm going to add some fire brine as a liquid cure because it just does such a nice job toughening up the skein, making it much more durable. But with those sugars added in there and with the fire brine, actually you would think these eggs would be a little bit too dry when it's all said and done, but they're firmed up, they hold up well, and they milk out really good. This is about, 8 skeins, I guess. Probably about a half bottle of the red fire brine. goes right in here. It's not specific measurements. It's enough to make sure that it's bathing in liquid, okay? One other thing I want to add, and you don't have to, this will add a tremendous amount of color. Between the red boraxyl fire and the fire brine, it adds a tremendous amount of color over the course of 8 to 12 hours. The other thing I can add though, and I really like to utilize this, is the red fire dye, because the dye properties are so strong when it comes to putting a deep red color onto your eggs that I really think Chinook and Coho respond to. I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of red fire dye into this mixture as well. Okay, so now I'm leaving a little bit of air in there at the start of this, because as I roll this around, I want to make sure all that dry cure gets evenly distributed, mixed up in the liquid, and that's basically my ratios. Like I said, I think I got eight small skeins in there. Typically we'll do, you know, a gallon Ziploc baggie. I never fill up more than half to 3/4 with egg skein and then add my contents accordingly. Doesn't matter how big or how many skeins there are. If you lay them out on the table and add your dry cure to them first, you can gauge how much you truly need. Then you dump them into the bag off of your paper towels right on in, and you add your liquid. Now, those eggs will sit in there for 8 to 12 hours. Typically, I'll just leave them at room temperature. This time of year, depending if your garage isn't too hot, no more than 70 degrees or so, you can leave them at room temperature. If you need to put them in the fridge, you can, but it slows down the curing process, okay? I want to keep these in the liquid for 8 to 12 hours. Good 12 hours isn't going to hurt anything. Then I'm going to take them out and put them in a colander and let them drip off, all right? And when I'm done with that, I'm going to take something like a plastic container. I'm going to line it with paper towels, and I'm going to simply take those egg skeins out of the colander, put them on the paper towels, egg side down, skin side up, allowing the rest of the liquid to drain out of the skein. I'm going to put this in my bait fridge uncovered for at least a day. I want those eggs and that skin to get almost a rubbery texture to them, and you're going to think that they're a little bit too firm and they won't juice out or they won't milk out enough to fish for Chinook or Coho, but that couldn't be further from the truth. They're going to feel durable, but when they get in water, they just naturally start milking and put out tremendous egg scent. So 8 to 12 hours in the liquid, put them into a colander, let them drip over a garbage can, let that liquid drain off. Put them into a container with paper towels at the bottom to absorb the extra liquid out. Put them in the fridge for a day. They're going to firm up and fish very, very well. Those eggs then are either ready to fish, or you can put them in the freezer.